Hello and welcome to RWR Plays TEW 2020. This is chapter 26 of WCW Lives On, where we're playing as Eric Bischoff, as if Fusion Media Ventures bought WCW in early 2001 from under the noses of WWE, and the company continued to exist with Eric Bischoff at the helm. As I said, this is chapter 26, so we've got pretty far in the series. If you want to catch up on the rest of the series, you can do. They're all available on the channel, and if you fancy giving us a little bit of support, you can subscribe to the channel for future episodes as well. Now, in addition to encouraging you to subscribe to the channel, I also wanted to throw out a plug, which I haven't really done as part of this series and probably should have been doing since the start, because this channel is actually a channel that is part of a podcast called The Random Wrestling Review. The Random Wrestling Review is a selection of podcasts, really, with one released every single week. Our main show, which is out fortnightly, is where we take a deep dive into a wrestling event from the past, picked seemingly at random, though I should warn you that the pod is not suitable for young ears, and we discuss that show, talk about it, give it a rating, give our MVP, have a bit of fun. We take a little bit of a funny look at things, as well as reviewing the show itself. And then during the alternating weeks where we don't have one of our main shows, we then present one of a number of different types of podcasts, whether it be The Game, Bracket Mania, RWR Now, or simply a random show of some kind. It's available pretty much everywhere you get your podcasts, so give us a listen and check us out. There are now over 150 episodes available, so there's bound to be something you like, and we're certainly almost certain to have covered some wrestling show that you like. We've done every single WrestleMania in history, but we've also done shows dating all the way back to 1984. Right to the current year, and also we have covered shows from WWE, WCW, NXT, TNA, AEW, AWA, and there's probably one other that I'm forgetting right now. Apologies. WCW. Did I say WCW? ECW as well. All of those are available. So yeah, go and check us out, pick something out, and see if you like what we do. Now, to today's episode, and first of all, of course, a recap of what took place on night one of Lethal Lottery. The first round matches took place, of course, and in notable happenings, Kevin Nash and DDP were drawn on opposing teams in the first match of the tournament. Kevin Nash, of course, went through there along with Kanyon. Totally Buff, meanwhile, were lucky enough to be drawn as a team together, and they won their match against Tommy Dreamer and Bobby Eaton. Scott Steiner and Sting defeated Ric Flair and Shane Douglas in the main event after Douglas walked out on his partner following the pair not getting on during the contest. And so we are down to the following 16 men into the quarterfinal: Kanyon, Kevin Nash, Vampiro, Rey Mysterio Jr., Booker T, Lance Storm, Rick Steiner, Prodigy, Buff Bagwell, Lex Luger, Toshiaki Kawada, Curt Hennig, Bill Goldberg, Jim Duggan, Scott Steiner, and Sting. So that is the recap of night one of the Lethal Lottery. Let's get to night two and the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals of the tournament to determine the number one contender to the WCW World Title at Halloween Havoc. And this time around, we are in the Staples Center, so just down the road from where we were the night before, in front of 19,000 fans, so the biggest attendance, I think, so far of this save, so that's really good. And we started with a pre-show dark match, which saw the Jarrett administration, Jeff Jarrett, John Cena, and Mike Sanders defeat Terry Funk, Ice Train, and Ernest Miller in a six-man tag match after 8 minutes and 23 seconds, when Jarrett pinned Ernest Miller. Segment rating here of 58. Jeff Jarrett was excellent with a 75 in-ring rating. Everybody else quite a long way below that, actually. John Cena 37, Mike Sanders a 38, Miller a 39, Ice Trader a 24, Terry Funk a 46. But whatever the case, this made Jeff Jarrett look great, and of course he is our world champion at the moment, so that's no bad thing. So the show gets underway with the first announcement of the night for the quarterfinals of the Lethal Lottery. Now, as I have previously discussed, the 16 men who progressed through to the quarterfinal stage were each drawn a number from 1 to 16, which corresponds to the order that they will appear and the partner they will have this round. So again, it's a random drawing of partner and opponent. Scott Steiner comes out first. He was number one in the draw, and so his segment rating here, 71, of him being announced to the ring. And the number 2 draw was Curt Hennig. Segment rating here of 60, so Curt Hennig comes out for his for his entrance. He was drawn as number 2, and there's little interaction between the two men. Number 3 was Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner's brother. Segment rating here of 66. Both he and Scott looked unhappy when it was revealed that Steiner was number 3. And then number 4 is Lance Storm. So he comes out to join Rick Steiner. So Lance Storm is going to be paired with Rick Steiner. It's Scott Steiner and Curt Hennig versus Rick Steiner and Lance Storm. But before the match can get underway, Scott Steiner says that he and his brother are refusing to face one another in this match. He says that WCW fixed it so that he and his brother have to oppose one another, and he says that they won't do it. He won't fight his brother, and so they have agreed to stand on the apron, nothing more, and won't tag in. Whoever wins the match between Lance Storm and Curt Hennig wins, and the Steiner brother that's on that team gets to go through. The announcers comment that this essentially makes the first match in the quarterfinal singles bout between Lance Storm and Curt Hennig, with the Steiner brothers watching on from either side of the ring. And the match itself goes for 16 minutes and 17 seconds. Limited involvement from Scott Steiner and Rick Steiner, which kind of hurt the quality of the match here, I think. Segment rating of 51, unfortunately. I think it would have ultimately been better than that, because I think, obviously, we've seen Lance Storm and Curt Hennig have some amazing matches. So I think this is just a case of where the game has gotten in the way a little bit. But anyway, Scott Steiner and Curt Hennig win. What happens here is that Curt Hennig gets the victory over Lance Storm. And yes, both Steiners refuse to make the tag whenever their partners attempt to bring them in. So next up is the announcements for match 2, and first of all is Bill Goldberg. He comes to the ring, segment rating of 70 for him and his entrance, and he is joined his tag team partner Jim Duggan, a segment rating for Jim Duggan of 30, but of course the commentators note that this is the second round in a row where Goldberg and Duggan have been drawn as a tag team, and they comment that they worked pretty well in the first round, so there's hope for them here. The number 7 draw was Rey Mysterio Jr. He's a segment rating of 66 for his entrance, and his tag team partner is Lex Luger. He was announced as number 8 in the draw, so it will be Bill Goldberg and Jim Duggan versus Rey Mysterio Jr. and Lex Luger, and the match goes for 9 minutes and 42 seconds and sees Bill Goldberg and Jim Duggan pick up the victory when Goldberg pinned Rey Mysterio Jr. Goldberg was head and shoulders above everybody else with an in-ring performance of 93. Rey Mysterio Jr. also had an 82. So I'm surprised that the segment rating was only 62, although Duggan and Luger were obviously a bit of a drag on that, and Lex Luger seemed off his game as well. So we go for the announcements for match 3, and we start with Kanyon being announced as number 9, segment rating of 42 for his entrance, and his tag team partner will be Vampiro, who gets a 68 segment rating as he comes to the ring. Then their opponents, first of all, announced as number 11, is Kevin Nash, a segment rating of 70 for his entrance, and he is joined as partner by Sting, segment rating of 69 for Sting's entrance. So it's Kanyon and Vampiro versus Kevin Nash and Sting in the next quarterfinal matchup. And segment rating of 65, Kevin Nash and Sting get the victory when Nash pins Kanyon in 9 minutes and 8 seconds. Sting, very good, 84 in-ring performance. Kevin Nash is 76. Kanyon and Vampiro both in the 60s as well. So that really should have been a better segment rating. But I think all of these matches are suffering a little bit for the strange heel and face dynamic that we've got, obviously as a consequence of the fact that this is a randomly drawn tag team match, as they all are. Okay, so it's the announcements for match number 4, the final quarterfinal of the tournament. And first of all, Booker T is announced, the segment rating of 72 for his entrance. His tag team partner will be Buff Bagwell, who is announced as number 14 in the draw, segment rating of 72 for his entrance. Their opponents, first of all, Toshiaki Kawada, a segment rating of 23. Kawada still obviously being established as an act in WCW, and his teammate will be Prodigy. He was number 16, the final man in the quarterfinal draw, segment rating of 47 for his entrance. So the match itself gets a segment rating of 62, a match that goes for 12 minutes and 36 seconds, and this one ends when Prodigy is in the ring facing Booker T and has control of the bout. Sean O'Haire rushes the ring and Prodigy immediately runs off. Prodigy runs to the back, and as the legal man is counted out by the referee, meaning Booker T and Buff Bagwell progress to the next round. not a very good set of performances here. Booker T and Bagwell have zero chemistry as partners, which is fine because we're not in the business of making them regular tag team partners at all. Both of them had an in-ring performance of 56 as a consequence. Kawada was the best man in the match, continues to perform really well in the ring despite not having a lot of popularity in general. So that's the end of the quarter-finals. We have 8 men who will go through to the semi-finals and be drawn into random tag teams against random tag teams again in the next round. Before that, though, we have got a women's 8-man tag match. In fact, it sees Alexis Lurie, Angel Orsini, Jillian Hall and Cara Slice defeat Ronnie Stevens, Jazz Kana and Amber O'Neil in 7 minutes and 10 seconds when Lurie pins Kana. A 7th rating here only of 22. There is some good performances though coming through. Angel Orsini 30, Kana 32, Alexis Lurie 27. Jazz at 28. So pleased with most of those things. Jillian Hall was off her game and the crowd was still put off by the fact that they don't have real investment in these wrestlers, but overall we're seeing some improvements from the women in general, and this was just a way to get them on the show and exhibit their skill on this Lethal Lottery show. After this, we get a backstage segment where Tony Schiavone introduces Shane Douglas as his guest, and Tony Schiavone asks Douglas about the fact that he walked out on Ric Flair yesterday in their first round match against Scott Steiner and Sting. Shane Douglas says that Ric Flair can go to hell. He says he's the franchise of WCW and he's not going to stand for Ric Flair slapping him in the face. Schiavone asks Douglas whether or not he is particularly annoyed at the fact that that cost him his chance to get a world title shot at Halloween Havoc, and Douglas says that whilst he is annoyed that he won't be going on to Halloween Havoc to face the WCW champion, it was still enjoyable for him to see Ric Flair defeated by Scott Steiner last night. So segment reign here of 64 and Shane Douglas and Ric Flair's. The enmity between the two continues with this one. And so we move into the semi-final stage of the show, and we begin with the announcements for the first match in the semi-final, and it is Sting announced as number 1 for the semi-final, segment rating of 69 with him coming out, and his tag team partner is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So Sting and Jim Duggan will team up together in the first semi-final, and their opponents are first of all Curt Hennig, a segment rating of 63, and then his tag team partner is Scott Steiner, a segment rating of 68 here. So Steiner and Hennig drawn together for the second round in a row. So it is Sting and Jim Duggan versus Curt Hennig and Scott Steiner, the first semi-final, and this one gets a segment rating of 67. Hennig and Steiner get the victory when Steiner submitted Jim Duggan with the Steiner recliner. Scott Steiner was head and shoulders above everyone else in the ring with a 93 performance. Sting had an 82, Duggan was a 45, Hennig a 64, and a segment rating of 67 is not too bad for this first semi-final. So we know who's in the second semi-final, but who will be teamed up with who? Well, first of all, Bill Goldberg is announced as number 5 in the semi-final draw, a segment rating of 70 for his entrance, and he is teamed with none other than Buff Bagwell, another guy who got segment rating of 70. His entrances have been pretty successful during the show. Then we have got the 7th announced number for the semi-final draw, and it's Booker T with a segment rating of 69, and his teammate is Kevin Nash, who also gets a segment rating of 69. So it's Bill Goldberg and Buff Bagwell versus Booker T and Kevin Nash in the second semi-final to join, and the winners of this will join Curt Hennig and Scott Steiner in the final. And the match goes for 13 minutes and 50 seconds, gets a segment rating of 62, and sees Booker T and Kevin Nash get the victory. And how the match goes here is that Goldberg is in control of the match against Booker T, but just as he's about to go for a spear, Bagwell tags himself in. Goldberg spears Booker T, unaware that the tag has been made, and Bagwell then gets in the ring, telling Goldberg to get out, and they have a little bit of a crossword before Goldberg is convinced to leave the ring. Bagwell then taunts Booker for a few moments, allowing Booker to recover, hit the bookend, and pin Bagwell to send he and Kevin Nash through to the final. So segment rating here of 62. Goldberg was excellent with an 86, Kevin Nash a 75, Booker a 70, Buff Bagwell just a 65. So the final will therefore be Curt Hennig, Scott Steiner, Booker T and Kevin Nash in a 4-way match, and the winner will get a title shot at Halloween Havoc. Before that main event though, There is a bit of post-match stuff here. So after the match, as Bagwell gets back to his feet following the loss, Goldberg readies himself and spears Bagwell when he turns around. So Goldberg annoyed with Bagwell, costing them the match. Segment rating of 69 as Goldberg spears Bagwell. Then there is one more match before the final. It's an 8-man tag. It sees Great Sasuke, Amazing Red, and Air Raid against the FBI and 3 count. And the babyfaces win here in 8 minutes and 26 when AJ Styles pinned Shannon Moore. Great Sasuke was head and shoulders above everybody else with an in-ring performance of 68, which is excellent. James Maritato had a 54. We've got AJ Styles with a 47, so that's pretty decent. I think that's his best performance so far in a WCW ring. Evan Courageous a 48. Shannon Moore 46. Generally a good set of performances there. Amazing Red getting a little bit of exposure as well in a bigger match. Segment rating of 59, very happy with that match. And so we come to the main event. It's Curt Hennig versus Scott Steiner versus Booker T versus Kevin Nash in the final of the Lethal Lottery. And it goes for 17 minutes and 53 seconds and gets a segment rating of 72. The course of the match goes that Scott Steiner seems to have Kevin Nash beaten and he goes for a pin, but Curt Hennig recovers and pulls Steiner out of the ring to prevent the cover. Steiner and Hennig then brawl on the outside while Booker T and Kevin Nash continue the battle in the ring. Booker T manages to hit a scissor kick and a bookend on Nash and gets the win to win the tournament. So yeah, segment rating of 72, Scott Steiner in 93, Booker T is 74, Kevin Nash in 80, and Curt Hennig only a 62. But that is the main event, and Booker T comes out with the victory in the Lethal Lottery. And that is the end of the show. An overall rating of 70. The main event was the best match of the night, although nothing as good as the previous night's main event, unfortunately. The show increased our popularity pretty much everywhere, though of course there are some limits due to the fact that there are a restricted number of viewers in quite a lot of different regions. But yeah, Booker T comes out on top of the Lethal Lottery, and we're just going to make a speech here. So I think top of the list of people who needs to be given some credit is Scott Steiner, because he was really good throughout. I think we also should give Kevin Nash some praise for his performances, because again he was really good. And then also I think Bill Goldberg, because again really good. The issue here is that the same people are being given credit, and they are all people who are not particularly good influences backstage. And I'll give you an update on that in a minute. But Steiner is happy, Nash and Goldberg pleased. So that is the Lethal Lottery, both nights now in the record books. And Booker T, as I said, comes out on top, pinning Kevin Nash in the final. And yeah, pleased to have got that through. It was a funny one. That the method I used for booking it was kind of a bit different. I started out just to give myself a bit of a straw man to start to pick apart. I started out just by doing a genuine random draw of all of the wrestlers right the way through the tournament, picking who I wanted to win each time, and then that allowed me to kind of iterate improvements to the tournament. So for example, the Totally Buff coming out drawn into the same match happened in the random drawing, so I was like, well, I can justify doing it now because it did actually happen. And one or two other bits and pieces, like the Steiner brothers coming up on separate sides of the ring, that was another thing that came up in that initial random drawing. So there were little bits and pieces that just happened as a consequence of just that random drawing, and then I used that to sort of edit the rest of it. Went through a number of iterations, every single time, by the way, doing some kind of random draw, even though I would then edit the end results based on what I already knew I wanted to have happen in the tournament. So yeah, a sort of strange way of booking it. And also, of course, the other thing that has sort of happened is Jeff Jarrett winning the WCW title was not actually something I was originally going to do, and there was going to be a different winner of the Lethal Lottery, but ultimately we went in that direction, and we're going to come back to Booker T versus Jeff Jarrett at Halloween Havoc for the WCW World title. Now, I did say I wanted to go over a couple of things. First of all, Unforgiven took place at WWF. 72,000 fans for Unforgiven. And it saw Chris Jericho defeat Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and Shane McMahon in a 4-way match to retain the WWF World Heavyweight title in 99 rating. Underneath that, The Rock and Undertaker against Kane and William Regal in a cell match, 98 rating. Eddie Guerrero defeated Mick Foley to retain the WWF title, Intercontinental title I should say. Hogan defeated Rikishi. Warrior defeated Raven in a cage match. I mean, it's stacked of stars. And it also did a show rating of 93, so that's pretty good for them. So, yeah, that's the kind of thing that we're up against. But as I said, we're not really trying to compete with them too much. The report for our show was that the feedback has been great, so that's really good. What I was going to show you, though, was the backstage harmony, and it is harmony, in fact, because we have a backstage rating currently 100%, even though we've got a lot of notable negative relationships. You can see here Ric Flair hating Eric Bischoff. At one point, I think it was Kevin Nash was turning everyone against Shane Douglas, which is why Douglas has got a load of people disliking him. And we've still got some notable personalities who are very negative in some cases. Kevin Nash extremely negative, Scott Steiner extremely negative. But for whatever reason, that hasn't proven to be such a big problem as time has gone on. And another thing that we've been able to do is keep paying off people when they get some negative sort of morale. Hopefully what that will mean is there hasn't been any toxic atmosphere backstage for a long time, so gradually the gripe that nearly all of the roster have got, they've all sort of got a small gripe against them, which is they're not happy about the previous toxic atmosphere backstage. That will slowly start to disappear as time goes on, and this should stay a relatively harmonious locker room. Now, that just gives me pause for thought in terms of what I'm going to do with signings, because one thing I have been doing with all the signings I made and the people I've re-signed, and also some of the people I've released, of course, is try to avoid, where possible, anybody who might be a negative influence. And that's meant me deciding not to sign certain people. It's also meant me releasing some people, and also had me thinking about future contract extensions. So that might just change my thought process now, because it seems like the backstage issues that I had in the beginning of the game have resolved themselves over time, which is obviously really, really good news. Also, in terms of size, just wanted to have a quick look at this. Mid-Atlantic's up to 65. I may have shown this before, but nevertheless we'll show again. Southeast at 64, and the Southwest and Tri-State at 63. So we're going up in popularity gradually pretty much everywhere, which is obviously really good news as well. And then finally, the top 100, just to give an update on that. Lethal Lottery Night 1 was our 5th best show. Night 2 was only 12th. Wasn't a great show, to be perfectly honest, but did what it had to do. That's all I cared about, was continuing our increase in popularity. And the main event was the best match on the show, and it's all the way down here. Booker T defeated Curt, Hennig, Scott Steiner, and Kevin Nash. 72 rated, 22nd best match of the year. As you can see, on night 1, we had a number of matches that made the top 100, including Kevin Nash and Kanyon against DDP and Terry Funk, and of course the main event of that show, Steiner and Sting versus Ric Flair and Shane Douglas, which got a 77. So that is just about everything I wanted to cover in today's show. I think that was a relatively successful pay-per-view, a pair of days, the Lethal Lottery. Something I'm going to look to do each year if this series continues, obviously, for that long. But certainly, I'm playing this game not knowing when the series is going to end. What I do know is that I have outline plans all the way up to Starrcade and actually beyond that now. But it's the more detailed plans that are holding me up in terms of kind of how much further I go, because it just gets harder and harder to come up with new ideas, new things to do. I don't like using the same rhythm of booking too often. I don't like getting into too many patterns of how I book certain wrestlers and certain feuds. So I think at the point where I start to feel like I'm struggling to come up with new ways of doing things will be when I stop, but I don't know when that's going to be yet, so hopefully that won't be for a while. But whatever the case, the way I'm booking is I am booking as if I am planning for the long term. I am planning for the next 10 years, not just however long this series goes on for. So thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like down below. That's really, really helpful. And of course, as I said earlier on today, give us a subscribe. Your subscribe is a really valuable thing for the channel and is much, much appreciated. That's everything for today. Thank you for watching. Until the next time, take care.